Hi everybody, it's Megan Reads and I'm here to, yes, you guessed it, talk all about books. And this is our fourth week in October, and this is going to be our last week, probably. Yeah, it is. Oh my god, it's going to be our last week talking about October spooky books. Now, as I've said before, I am a spooky book chick, so don't worry, this doesn't exactly end at the end of October. It might end for a week or two, and I'll get more into my thrillers because I love a good thriller. But this is the first book this week that I read. I read Floating Staircase by Ronald Malfi. It was pretty good. I've actually never heard of this author before. I was looking up one day, like all creepy, like horror themed books, kind of like Stephen King vibes, and bam, he came up and he had a list of books. He had so many, but for whatever reason, I think it might have been the cover art that really sold me on this one. I was like, oh, that looks a little different, a little interesting. And then when I read the synopsis, I really liked it. So I said, okay, let me check it out. And it's a doozy of a book. It's hefty. It could hurt someone if you smack them in the head. It's 464 pages. And it was good. It was a good book. I did really enjoy it. I thought the writing was done really well. Very Stephen King-esque, or somebody trying very hard to pull off what Stephen King pulls off, and God knows that's hard as hell to do, but I do think he did a really good job. And he's an established author. He's been around for years. He has many novels under his belt, so I'm sure my little review means absolutely nothing to him in the grand scheme of things. But it was good. It wasn't great. I did enjoy it. I did really like it. You know what, before we get into that, before we get into what I thought about it and what I didn't think about it, let's get into what the hell this is even about, right? Right. Well, this is about Travis Glasgow. He is a writer. He's been writing for a couple of years under a pseudonym. And he ended up selling, one of his books just got sold and it made a lot of money, and with that money he decided to buy a house. And he decided to buy a house near his brother, his older brother Adam, literally across the street from his brother. They've been estranged for some time, ever since their mother actually passed away from cancer a couple of years prior, and they're trying to reconnect and bond. He's been living in London for a substantial amount of years with his wife Jody, and they've just come back to the States, and they're going to be living in Maryland. So they thought, okay, you know what, we'll live next to my brother. There's a house for sale. This will be great. Adam basically did everything looking for the house and helping them because they were abroad. Now, Travis and his brother have a complicated relationship. Travis has complicated relationships with many people. He became an author. His first book was actually about the death of his younger brother. His brother Kyle died when they were 10 years old, when he was 10 years old. Travis is actually the middle child, and they went swimming in the lake and he never came back up again. And Travis for years and years has blamed himself because he was there and he felt like he should have saved his brother. He was 13 at the time. He turned to a life that wasn't so good for a very long time, and then he ended up finding writing, and he actually wrote his first book about what happened to his brother to try to get closure and come to terms with a lot of his grief. And from that point on, he just kept writing horror novels, or novels in the horror supernatural genre, because he always felt like his brother was with him in some part or another. If he was, or if he wasn't, he didn't know. He also felt like his brother might be angry with him and blame him, because he blames himself. He blames himself even all these years later. He still does. And that was 20 years ago that occurred. So they get a house. They move into the house across the street from his brother. He's excited to bond with his brother again. They don't know much about the house. They just know that the owners were odd. It was a woman and her brother, and their father had lived there for years. He got sick, and the brother and sister came back to help take care of him. And the woman, Veronica, the daughter, had a son with her named Elijah. He was 10 years old, and he actually ended up passing away in that house. Behind their home is a very large lake, and he apparently hit his head and drowned in the lake. So when he hears this, Travis, he immediately thinks of his brother Kyle. And he also starts to notice by this point there are weird things happening in the house. There are noises. He sees what appears to be a little boy, handprints on the wall, small handprints. There is a place in the basement. He finds a door. He opens the door and he finds what is a little kid's bedroom filled with things. It was never taken out of the house. So he wonders if Elijah did fall and hurt himself or if he was murdered, because things just seem a little abnormal. And because he's a writer and he's having severe writer's block being here, he decides to look into the case and also question his brother. His brother, Adam, is a cop and was on the scene of this crime. So he's asking his brother all these questions. His brother is getting angry with him, like, don't ask all these questions. I'm the cop. You know what this is all about, Kyle. You can't come to terms with what happened all these years ago. You always have to make something into a story. And it's a ghost story. It's also coming to terms with grief and what grief does to us, and what prolonged dealing with certain emotions and never dealing with them, what it spills out to, and rage and guilt and the assumptions that we make of others. It was a really well done book. It was creepy. It was horror vibes for sure. But I actually thought this book was far more sad than I was intending. Yes, there is dealing with a death of a child, Elijah Dentman, who's 10, and also talking about his brother Kyle, that was also 10, 20 years ago, and the correlation between the two. But I've read many books like that, and it still has the horror vibes. I felt like it was far sadder. The child Elijah was also special needs. And that was really sad because he didn't really understand certain things in his life, and him dying the way he did. It was just sad. I thought it was a really sad book, far more than it was scary. Even the haunting and or a supposed haunting, I didn't find that scary at all. I wasn't intimidated by this child. The child didn't seem intimidating. He didn't do anything that seemed threatening and or harmful whatsoever. I thought the book was really well written. I thought the plot was engaging. I liked it. Unfortunately, this is one of those books that I did like, but I did not love. Another book that in a couple of weeks from now, I will forget that I read. I will definitely check this author out again because his writing was very good. He was a really talented writer. I also listened to the audiobook, and that got me more into the story. I do think this book would have benefited significantly from being a little bit less pages. It's 464 pages, like I said, and it feels like it. I think if it had cut out 45, 50 pages, it would have been a banger. It really would have been so much better and more articulated. I feel like they dragged certain things out far longer than they had to be for the sake of making more pages and making it a longer novel. And I feel like it hurt the story in some ways by it doing that. I liked Travis as a character. I did not like Adam, his brother. I didn't like Jody, the wife. I thought Adam was a really horrible fucking big brother. He didn't really listen to his brother for anything, and he kept treating him like he was 8 years old, even though they're adults, and successful adults at that. The Elijah Dentman situation was really sad. I'm trying to think, like, what other things, like, I really enjoyed about it. The plot was interesting, and the idea that he's an author and he's now going to, like, investigate this on his own. And his brother was the cop investigating it as well, so you know they're going to butt heads. I thought that was really interesting. There's a character in this, David Dentman, who is the uncle of Elijah, and it is, he thinks, Travis, that he did it. He probably was the one that did it, because there was never that many suspects that it could have been, because this boy was very secluded. He was mentally handicapped in some ways, so he didn't have lots of friends. There wasn't lots of people to be around. That is my cat. Hello, Shade, in the corner there. There's always something in the corner somewhere in my house. But yeah, we're supposed to basically dislike David Dentman, and I did. I disliked him as a character. He was suspicious, I suppose, but some things with him just didn't make sense at fucking all. Some of the way he acted and how abrasive he was when somebody was just giving him like a box. He just assumes the worst in people, and maybe it's because of how he was raised. My cat's trying to go behind the TV. Did she get there? Oh, she'll get there soon. But I didn't like him. I didn't like him at all, but I also didn't understand why some other people hated him so much. Like, there wasn't much to go on. Like, they kept saying he was an extremely abusive person when he only ever was in one abusive situation in his life, and it was defending himself. So I was just confused by some of the characters here, by some of the choices of the characters here, and by how they reacted to other characters. I felt like it was a little estranged and odd. There's a whole scene at the end of the book, well, no, towards the end of the book, in a cemetery, and that entire part of the book, to me, when I look back and I finished it all, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. It was really fucking odd and weird, and I thought it would come to a bigger head towards the end of the novel. It would make more sense. It didn't. There's a good amount of stuff that actually didn't make sense when I look back at it. Good book, though. I did enjoy it. I would recommend reading it. I wouldn't say it was like the best book I've read this month or the best book I've read in the last couple months or anything like that. It was a good book. It was an okay book. It was an average book. I appreciated the story. I did like I said, I liked the main character. I did like the plot. I just felt like it could have went somewhere better had it been shorter and a little bit more concise. It could have went to a better place, and the story would have benefited greatly from that. But that's it. That's all I can really say about the floating staircase. Floating staircase. I keep calling it the floating staircase. Like, even when I'm talking to my family, and I'm like, it's called floating staircase, not the floating staircase. And sometimes I really wish that the author had just done the floating staircase, because just saying floating staircase, this sounds like there should be something else in front of it or after it. In my personal opinion, like, as title wise, I'm like, for some reason I can't say it correctly, but it was a good book. And I'm coughing. It was a good book. I did enjoy it, and I would recommend it to people. Bear in mind, trigger warning situation for sure in this book. It does deal with the death of a child. It also does with two children. One from 20 years prior and one from a year ago at the start of the book. It does also, they do touch on abuse. They do touch on things in the R family at one point in time, so be prepared for that as well. And also Elijah Dentman, the child, was handicapped. So if you don't like reading anything about a child that has disabilities and something bad happening to them, then I suggest that you do not read this book, because they do talk about his disability and his death and how they are linked together in many ways. So that's all that I got to say about that, and I cannot wait to see you guys next time. Next time you will see me in a totally different clip, and actually I think I'm only going to be reading, I think I only have enough time to read 2 books in this. Maybe I'll do more. Maybe I'll be able to squeeze in a third, but I have a good idea that the next clip is probably going to be like it, and then I'll do like my wrap up at the end of the month with all the books in October, because we're hitting it. We're getting real close to the end here. But I will see you guys next time in the next clip. See ya. Bye. Hi everybody, it's Megan Reads coming back at you to, yes, that's right, you guessed it, talk about books. And we are here actually to talk about the very last book that I will be reading in October. Isn't that insane? We've done a month of books. I am so beyond excited that we did this. I cannot wait for November. I am so excited for the next month and all those books. I actually read 11 books this month. It was 10 originally, and then I was like, I have enough room to fit one more, which is where this gem comes in. So good. The Last Flight by Julie Clark. Oh my God. Let's just sit back. Let's just digest. This book was amazing. This book was really good. It was well written. The characters were really diverse and interesting. The story was really good. I paused not because the story wasn't good, but the story is a story that unfortunately we see so much in books as women, and something that unfortunately as women we actually go through quite a bit as well, as the main character Claire Cook does in this novel, and in a lot of ways the same things that had befallen Eva James. So it was a bittersweet book to read in some aspects. It was thrillery, it was a mystery. I would not call it horror, but at this point at the end of the year, the end of the year, the end of October, I thought a really good thriller would be just as exciting, and it was. It was a change of pace from all the horror right in your face. And this book has horror in a different way. It's not horror in spooky vibes and, you know, jumping out behind a bush or somebody getting stabbed repeatedly in the neck. It's not that kind of horror, but it's the horror of what people do to each other. It's the horror of abuse. That's talked about highly in this. So in that way, I do totally believe that this is a fucking horror, because what happened to these women is horrific. And unfortunately, it's a part of a dialogue that we are talking about more and more, but I never think that we could talk more about. We always should continue that conversation. And I'm going to actually tell you what this book is about, and then I'll get into my opinions and what I think about everything. This book is about Claire Cook. She's in her 30s. She's been married to a very rich man named Rory Cook for years. He comes from a political dynasty family, very much like the Kennedys. His mother was very wealthy, very well known in the political circles, and now he's about to run for Senate. He's gorgeous. He's nice. He's charming. He has money coming out of his everything, you know what I mean? And on paper and in public, he looks wonderful. But the truth is, he's not. He's an abusive prick who emotionally and physically abuses his wife and has been doing so for years. Claire was a girl that was very smart, went to college, to Vassar, in fact, had a great job, and then met this wonderful man and fell head over heels in love, and in many ways gave up her identity, her friendships, things she had. Her family had passed away years before, so she didn't really have a family or a strong family unit, and she fell in love with Rory. And he's about to announce his run for Senate, and Claire knows this is the only time she'll ever be able to get out. The abuse has been getting worse, and for years she's waited for an opening, and she feels this is finally the opening for her that she can take to leave him. But she's not just going to leave him. She's going to disappear. She's been hoarding money slowly. She has one friend named Petra, who she met in school and reconnected with, whose family is a little in the underbelly of the world, little mob situations there, and helped her get fake IDs so she can leave him, change her name. She's just going to disappear into the abyss. That's all she wants. She doesn't want money. She doesn't want a divorce. She doesn't want the public prying. She doesn't want even the satisfaction of talking about the abuse, because she feels nobody's going to believe her. Who's going to believe little Claire Cook when this big, rich philanthropist who gives to charities and does all these wonderful things, who's going to believe that he hurt her? There's nobody in her corner. He's very smart about the abuse. He doesn't do it in front of other people, even though everybody suspects. He also, in their big house, he has all of the people who work for him watch her. And how does he get him to do that? He pays for all their children's schooling. So he's very manipulative. He's got lots of people under his thumb, including the people that have worked for him. So she doesn't have anybody. So she decides, I'm going to leave. I've been squirreling money away. I'm fucking out of here. Bye-bye, Rory. She plans on one of the tours that he wants her to go to as the soon-to-be senator's wife, waving and everything, to go to Detroit. She's been prepared for this. She had a letter sent, money sent, ID sent. The day of, he tells her, no, I want you to go to Puerto Rico. I'm going to go to Detroit. I'm actually already halfway there. He gets to the hotel that she was going to stay in and gets the package of the money, the new IDs, everything, and realizes she was going to leave him. Now that's not acceptable. So now Claire is in the airport about to board a plane to Puerto Rico to do work, and she's absolutely terrified because she knows now he knows that she was going to leave him. Also, the night before, because she's a smart little cookie, she found his secret laptop that he hides with all of his other contracts and things that he does, and made copies of everything. So just in case anything ever happened, that was her failsafe. She doesn't want to have to use it, but she's absolutely terrified. She has no money. And when she's at the airport freaking out, this woman overhears, named Eva James. She's in a similar situation. She wants to get the hell out too. She doesn't want this life. She wants to fly anywhere. She hears her predicament. They have a drink at the bar, begin to talk, and realize, let's swap passports. We're already checked in to the airport. We're past all the IDs and everything. You'll just take my ID. I'll take yours. We'll switch phones. TSA, most people by this point when they're getting the boarding passes right before leaving, they're not going to look. They're not going to see who you are. We look similar enough that we could pass. And that's what they do. She takes her ID and goes back. Claire takes Eva's ID and goes to California, where Eva was from. And Eva takes her ID and goes to Puerto Rico. Both of them thinking this is going to be the change that they need in their life, and this is a good thing. Well, what happens is the plan lands. Claire gets off the plane and sees on the news bulletin that the plane that Eva was on, the plane that she was supposed to be on, Claire herself, went down. And all 96 passengers have passed. And they are assuming she is one of those passengers. So she realizes, oh my God, what happened? I can't believe this. So now this poor girl is assumed to be dead. And now she has nowhere to go because her face is all over the news because she was the famous Rory's wife. So she goes to Eva's house and hides out there and finds that Eva isn't exactly telling all of her story either. And that's more or less the plot. I don't want to get too into it because I'm going to get all crazy here, but they both have gone through a lot. You read the book in perspectives. You read the book from Brooke. I hear sirens again. You read the book from Claire's perspective, and you also read it from Ava's perspective. You read it from Claire's now, everything that's happening, and then weeks and days and months leading up to the flight, going up in flames. This book was great. It was well written. It was interesting. I loved the characters. I loved learning more about them and finding out why they were the way they were. I really connected to Claire and Ava in many ways. I was in an abusive relationship for years when I was younger. And reading about these women's abuse, nowhere near as bad as what mine was, but it was abuse, and it did last for a couple of years, and it was physical abuse. It is hard to read about that, to read what these women went through and feeling belittled and feeling like nobody would believe their story, because that's such a relatable thing. The God's honest truth is, you never feel like people are going to believe you. There's this voice in your head that always says, nobody's going to understand, or they're going to look at you and think you're weak, or not understand why you stayed as long as you did. And reading this book and hearing both women come to grips with how they feel and how they feel about their self and their self-esteem and what they are really worth and what they're not going to take anymore, and how when you're a woman, sometimes you're just, society makes it seem as if you're just supposed to take what life gives you and you're not supposed to want more or better or to change. And I thought this book was really good dealing with all of that. I thought that was really interesting, and I am opening up to you about that. That is one part of what makes me me, and that is one part about what makes these characters who they are. But it is very interesting to read from their perspectives, and it's interesting to even see like people around them and how there's assumptions that nobody cares and nobody sees, and people do see, they just don't know what to say, how to act, and that's 100% true in abusive situations. This book is good. It's well written. There is a comeuppance with Claire and everything, and seeing that story go through was really interesting. I've never read from Julie Clark before, but I'm actually going to be reading a book from her next month in November, so I'm really excited. That's another reason I wanted to give this a try, because I wanted to see, is she my girl? Is she somebody that I'm gonna like to read? And I do. This book was not long either. It was 320 pages, so I banged this bitch out in like a day and a half. I listened to it in Kindle, and I also did the audiobook. Whoever did the audiobook, chef's kiss, really good job. I love the epilogue in this book, and I love the dedication in this book. The dedication for me of saying more or less that, there are survivors out there and we believe you and we believe your stories. I think that's really important, and that's a really important message to put out into the universe for other women and for other men that are in abusive situations, because it's not just us ladies, it's men too. I really enjoyed this book. I could not recommend it enough. It's mystery, it's thriller, it's high tense suspense, it's a little, oh, I almost forgot something. There's a murder situation too. How dare I forget? There's a little murder situation. There is a woman, it's said very early on, so it's not a shocking situation, that Rory had dated years before, named Maggie, who died terribly, and it's a suspected, always in the public eye, like, did he kill her? Did he not kill her? And now that Claire has left him and is in hiding, she's starting to think about all these pieces. And because she's able to see like his documents and everything from that file she took, that gets discussed more, and you see more details about what had happened in 1992 when they were together. So I thought that was really interesting. And it was really interesting too to show the level of abuse and how it's 9 times out of 10, if it's happening to you, it happened to a prior relationship as well. 9 times out of 10. Sometimes you are the first. And that sucks. Abuse sucks no matter how you cut it. Always. But I really like this book. The ending to me was a little bittersweet. There were some really emotional parts for me, as I said. I mean, nothing like crying or getting upset, and no trigger warnings, honestly. I feel like I have to mention there is abuse. That is a trigger warning for sure, but it's even talked about in the dedication, so I feel like you go in kind of knowing that that's going to happen, and it's in the synopsis that she is an abused wife. So I feel like knowing that, that's what you know you're going in for. You know that off the bat. It's not very graphic in any way. They do talk about abuse, obviously, but not, it's more like an arm's length situation, not so in your face, which I appreciate, because some authors are a little in your face with it, which I don't always mind, but wasn't really prepared for that. My stomach wasn't prepared for that, so happy that it didn't do that, because you got to be in the mood for something a little heavy like that, and I definitely was not in the mood for that today. But I really like this book. I cannot wait to read more Julie Clark. I think she's a really talented writer. And I fell totally in love with Claire Cook and Eva James and their life and their relationships and how their paths crossed, and also how they were so different and yet so similar in so many ways too. And it just shows how life is sometimes, and how, you know, one decision, one little veer off here can change anything and everything about you and what you thought you could be or could not be. I'm rambling because the truth of the matter is it's just a really great book, and I highly recommend that you check it out. And that's it. That's October. That's October done. Woo! I am going to do a wrap up on Halloween, actually, exciting, where I'm actually going to like rate every book that I've read in order and say like, I like this one more, and then you will get my rating system, because I don't know if you've noticed, I have not given ratings on any of these books because I'm waiting for my wrap up to do it. But I really hope that you liked this video. I know it's not as long as some of the other ones are, although maybe it will be, because this one, I'm looking at my clock, is 14 minutes and 36 seconds. So maybe it will be quite long between this and the other book I did previously. But I hope you really liked it. I cannot wait to see you guys next week and talk more. And I can't wait to see what you think about my wrap up and my readings. I cannot wait to see you guys next time, and I can't wait to see you next time. Happy, healthy, and of course, reading. Bye.